Hi, this is Chris Smith with Local Joe's. At Local Joe's, we help local business. Hi, this is Chris Smith with Local Joe's.
This is City Pulse Newsmakers, a weekly look at the issues and the people behind them in Greater Lansing. Brought to you by City Pulse, Lansing's weekly alternative newspaper. And now, here's your host, City Pulse publisher, Burl Schwartz.
Good morning. Our topic again this week is politics. Last week we had the first half of the public relations firm of Truscott Rossman with us, the back half. Kelly Rossman McKinney. And Kelly, welcome. It's great to have you.
Thank you. I really appreciate being here, Burl, although I'm not sure I appreciate being referred to as a back half. Let's call it the anchor of the team.
The anchor of the team. Well, and you know, John, of course, is a Republican. I've never asked you your politics.
So I am a Democrat, but I'm a moderate Democrat.
Okay.
So, you know, I am sort of halfway between Democrat and independent.
The mantra I hear about this election is we have two seriously flawed candidates. What do you think about that?
I think that's an accurate description to a certain extent. I think there are certainly candidates who would be more beloved by either party. I think John Kasich, for example, for the Republicans, would have been a candidate that would have attracted Democrats to swing over to the Republican side. You know, I think Joe Biden would have been a candidate who the Republicans I know who are having an extraordinarily difficult time because they can't bring themselves to vote for Trump and they can't bring themselves to vote for Hillary. So they're voting for Gary Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, Gary Johnson, the guy who stuck his tongue out at a reporter and talked to her, the guy who didn't know Aleppo. I mean, I kind of give him a pass on that, but not really. So I think it's a difficult time for true hardcore partisans. Each candidate has their issues. You know, there are certain things about Hillary Clinton, and I am an unabashed Hillary Clinton supporter. But there are things about her that you just go, oh, for crying out loud. Just get rid of this email thing. You know, you said you were sorry, but, you know, all these deleted emails, they're personal emails. So just say, these are personal emails. They were deleted. I wasn't required to hang on to them, etc. And the WikiLeaks stuff that's coming out now is just sort of fascinating and does show the unseemly underbelly of what it is to be political.
The New York Times, the magazine, this last weekend said that Hillary Clinton says, let's leave it to history to decide whether she's been treated unfairly because she's a woman. And I want to ask you about women in this election, but do you think she has been singled out because she's a woman?
I don't know that she's been singled out specifically for her gender. There is no doubt she is by far the most experienced candidate to run for president in decades, if not in history. Does she get attacked because she's a woman? No, she gets attacked because she's a presidential candidate who is a woman. To me, the singularly unfair attack on her as a woman is the attacks that Trump tries to make by associating her husband's issues with her. And that's the unfair attack. She is the only woman I know of whose husband was a philanderer, and she's the victim, and yet she's treated as if she is responsible for his philandering. I mean, it's just totally turned upside down. Most women whose husbands cheat on them are, people sympathize with them, they empathize with them. Instead,
It's a little bit like the rape issue, though, where a lot of people say the woman's at fault.
yeah, it's very interesting. My two youngest sons, who are 20 and 23, and I had a very spirited debate yesterday about what is sexual assault. And my youngest son really said that it was these women who came out against Trump in the last week. Gee, he said, what took them so long? And it's kind of fishy that they didn't come out earlier. So I was explaining to him a couple things. Number one, the majority of them, if not all of them, were very young when the incident occurred. Number two, when you're very young and something like that happens to you and there are no witnesses other than the extraordinarily powerful, wealthy person who's foisted himself upon you, it's not unusual that you would not say anything. It's embarrassing, it's humiliating, and you keep thinking, did that really happen? Did he really do that? And you kind of start talking yourself out of it. These women came out because in last week's debate, he specifically said, oh, I don't do those things. That was just locker room talk. And they came out to prove that, yes, in fact, he does do those things. It's not just locker room talk. His actions do speak and mirror the words he said. And, my youngest son, again, we had this very spirited debate. Is kissing sexual assault? It was fascinating, and ultimately he said, oh, I can see that. I can see that.
Is that a silver lining of this very ugly campaign that we are
God, I hope
having
there's
this frank discussion?
I hope there is a silver lining, and I think that frank discussion was probably an example of frank discussions in families across the country. The concern I've got about the election in general, Burl, is what happens after Election Day. Hillary is very likely to win, but that will not appease Trump supporters. And we have to be mindful of the great anger, hostility that's out there among those people who support Trump. We've got to be mindful of that. They will not go away, and if anything, they'll be more hostile. So what is it we do to make them feel like Americans, like their voice was heard? I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I don't know if there is an answer. Bill Maher, I love to watch his show, and he just puts it out there. Americans are stupid. Now, not all Americans are stupid. Obviously, the ones who agree with him aren't stupid.
Right.
But is there an element in this country that, no matter what, is never going to be happy?
Well, I'm sure there is. There's a very visceral response, positively and negative, toward Donald Trump. And I have to begrudgingly give him credit for being a master communicator in many ways, because he has a handful of key messages and he repeats them over and over and over again. He has relatively little, if any, substance. He has no plans, but what he says resonates with people. And they're not people like you and I. They're people who we know, though, and who we see every day in life. They just don't necessarily self-identify. And they're angry, they're frustrated because even though the recession has ended, they lost a house, they lost a car, they lost a job, and they've not yet recovered from that. How do we help fix those people? And when I say fix, I mean make them whole again.
But how do we help people who cannot see beyond that, they are willing to support, as someone who I think is a danger to the country if he were to get elected president?
How do we help those folks see that? I don't know. I was so startled 2 weeks ago when the revelations of Donald Trump's infamous 2005 Billy Bush tape comes out, and Paul Ryan and several others step away. They don't appear to rally for him, and those who do deny his remarks, step away from it, and they're booed by the people who are there. And this is a crowd that will yell, "Lock her up." This is a crowd that even on their own, because I believe crowd mentality sort of foments all kinds of activity that people wouldn't do on their own. But I saw an interview yesterday where a young man, he was about 30, said if she's elected, she should be shot and killed while in office. Who says that? Who in their right mind says that? And that kind of talk, in my opinion, Burl, has been allowed by Trump. He encourages it. He encourages violence. He called Hillary Clinton the devil, for crying out loud. I mean, Burl, what kind of world are we living in now?
You know, I was reading a review of a new book, a new biography of Hitler, and I think the reason I was reading it was because of Trump. You know, I hate to I mean, I don't take it lightly to compare anybody, but the tactics. Today, this week, when I heard about the bombing of a Trump office in North Carolina, my first thought was, I wonder if they did that to themselves.
Exactly. And you know, you're not wrong. You're not wrong to really do some reading into Hitler, because there have been comparisons over and over and over again. My friend Katie Packer. Katie was Mitt Romney's presidential campaign manager. She is very anti-Trump. Her parents were born in England, and they have talked with her about how Hitler-like Trump is. And it's something that you don't necessarily see when it's happening, except we do see it happening, and history does repeat itself. So
yeah, you know, when Franklin Roosevelt ran, we had Huey Long, but fortunately we had Roosevelt. Had Trump been more clever, had Trump not had the baggage he had, he might well have gotten elected, don't you think?
Well, he certainly has a lot of baggage, and yes, I think he definitely had a shot at getting elected, and it's still 3 weeks away. Seriously, anything could happen.
And with these emails out there, it is scary.
Right. I mean, my favorite email is Debbie Dingell's email about being left out of the Michigan Women for Hillary event. So you're starting to see all of these emails that are just inside political game. Insider. I mean, an inside game. Those of us who work in and around politics sort of go, But those outside are sort of horrified by the environment in which we live and work, and that may be rightly so.
And not only are you inside and around politics, you're inside and around media. And I'm reminded in this election of a Woody Allen joke about a restaurant. He said the food is terrible and the portions are so small. And I wonder about. I cannot get enough of it. The news is terrible, and I listen to it constantly. What do you think about the media performance?
So I'm like you. I am a news junkie, and I am like addicted to it in a horrible way. My husband is constantly teasing me because I'm on my phone and I want to see the latest. And but I think the media coverage has been fair. I don't think it's biased as Trump claims it is. I think it is fair, and Trump just hands them a lot more fodder than the Clinton campaign does. Trump opens his mouth And 99.9% of the time, what he says is newsworthy. You know, his speech in Diamonddale, when he talks about African Americans and why they should vote for him. He says, you know, his sort of litany, and then he says, what have you got to lose? Now, the irony is he's in Diamonddale, which everyone in this region knows is about as white a part of our area as you can get.
Right.
His crowds are white, and the media covers that. They've covered Hillary. I think the media's been abundantly fair. I think Trump has shown incredibly thin skin when he's going after Saturday Night Live for parodying him. My goodness.
The criticism from the left has been, although it's dissipating some now, that the media took Trump too seriously, gave him too much attention. Do you think that there's any validity to that?
No, it was news. Every time he opened his mouth, it was news. And he was attracting crowds of 15, 20,000 people. It was news. And, you know, what he was saying wasn't substantive, it was provocative. And that's what news tends to cover. They like provocation, they like controversy. You know, even I'm fascinated. It's like watching a car wreck.
Yeah, exactly.
A debate on substance is interesting and it's important, but it's not
boring.
riveting. Exactly, it's boring. It's not riveting. Hey, I did something this last debate, the second debate. Usually I'm watching social media, I'm on Twitter, and then I'm always like a minute behind of whatever's going on in the debate. I put my phone down, turned it off, and watched the debate. And I'm really glad I did, because you pay attention. You notice things. You notice things like Donald Trump doesn't wear a wedding ring. You notice that body language right away. You just notice things that you might not otherwise have noticed. Although Twitter is very good about calling your attention to all kinds of things.
Of course, you can't watch the debate without Twitter being scrolled across
the
screen,
true.
which
That's
I find a distraction.
It is a distraction, but I think it's an acknowledgement of our ADD society, where we can't watch something without something else going on.
Hillary Clinton's the first to admit that she is a better office holder than she is a candidate. You're an expert on public relations. What should she be doing?
Well, she's starting to do more of it. She needs to show this warm, friendly side that I keep hearing she has when she's with her friends. And there's nothing wrong with showing that side to the people you're talking to. And she started to do it. The debate, the second debate, where they were in a town hall setting, she actually got up and walked toward the person who was asking her a question. And that's a good way to begin to sort of bond and connect with the person who's asking the question. But what she didn't do was say, tell me why you asked that question. Tell me a little bit about what's going on in your world. Instead, she answered the question like the policy wonk that she is. So she missed the opportunity to connect with that young woman. That's what she needs to do, is really connect in a way that, oh gosh, Jennifer Granholm did. Jennifer Granholm was a great candidate, not a great office holder. And Clinton's probably the opposite. Clinton knows her stuff backwards and forwards, doesn't necessarily connect with people, as she's not charismatic. She just isn't.
Democrats this year had an interesting primary election themselves with Bernie Sanders.
Feel the burn?
Of course, obviously, unless there is some huge surprise, Hillary's going to win this election, but that wasn't clear a month ago. Would Sanders would he have been a better candidate against Trump?
I don't think he would have been a better candidate against Trump. I really don't. There are people like me who, as much as I appreciate Bernie Sanders, he wasn't a Democrat until very recently. And he is further left than I'm comfortable being for the most part. So you've got this, you have a wide range of folks in the middle. You've got true independents, you have moderate Democrats, you have moderate Republicans. Where would we all go? Because I'm not sure any of us would be comfortable if you had Bernie and Donald Trump. So what would that mean? Gary Johnson, Jill Stein, or do you start writing names in?
But Hillary has moved to the left because of him.
Left,
she
yep.
is a gradualist. There's no question she will govern in a different way than Sanders would have.
Definitely. And, she's someone who I believe has core values, core principles, but also recognizes that the most successful way to get something done is to negotiate, to get as much as what you can, and if that means giving your opponent something they want, so be it. That's what true politics really is all about, is negotiating to find a middle that appeases everyone.
Is that possible anymore, though? I mean,
it used to be, and I like to think it still is. And it's funny, she got criticized for saying she had a public agenda and a private agenda. But every politician I know can identify with that. You have what you want to accomplish, but in order to do that, you do several other things in a public way that gets you where you want to go. I'm not surprised by that, and I think it was unfair that she got criticized for using the Lincoln movie as an example, because that is a great example of, here's my private agenda, but in order to move my private agenda, I have to do all of these things in a public way.
The public, a segment of the public complains about how nothing gets done in Washington, but but a lot of them are repelled by the idea of politicians actually being able
Doing
to talk
something,
to each other, being able to, the old Ronald Reagan, Tip O'Neill thing, where at the end of the day they could have a drink.
It's interesting. I don't watch the national political scene nearly as much as I watch the state political scene. And that is very much the case at the state level. It's gotten hyper partisan, where the good old days, I started working in the legislature in '79. It's like the guys who punch in their buddies, and then they punch in a clock and they're adversaries, and then they punch out and they're buddies again.
Right.
That's how the legislature was. They could argue on principles and policies.
And that's a good thing.
Yes,
right?
that's a wonderful thing.
But so much of the public rejects that.
But at your core, your goal is to make the state of Michigan or the country a better, safer, more fair place to live. And I don't think people buy that that's what candidates, what politicians, we don't even call them statesmen, which is what they are, call them politicians.
So trickle down, do you see
trumped up trickle down, or trickle down in
well,
general?
Do you see coattails?
Coattails? No, don't. So for Democrats, definitely coattails. I see a grave, and rightfully so, grave concern that Republicans have about what's called the down ticket. And when the top of the ticket, in this case it would be Trump, is not doing well, there's grave concern about whether or not the rest of the Republican candidates will fare exactly the same way. And I think there's cause to be concerned. You know, we have a race right here in our district, the Tom Barrett-Teresa Abed race. Teresa had the seat 4 years ago for 2 years. Tom Barrett beat her by less than 100 votes? And he served for 2 years, and they are neck and neck. I live in that district. I get direct mail stuff every single day. Barrett has not walked away from Trump the way I expected him to. So he says, I'm concentrating on my campaign. Well, of course you are, but what about your party's presidential candidate? And he's not addressed that.
Now, it's easy for someone who leans Democratic to say that. Do you have any sympathy for these politicians?
I do. I have a great deal of sympathy for Republican candidates. I really do, because they have an obligation to run the very best race they possibly can, and they have the biggest baggage I've ever seen in a political race. My recommendation to them is to not only distance yourself from what Trump said, but distance yourself from Trump, period. So that means saying, I don't support what he said, and I just don't support his candidacy. It's exactly what Lieutenant Governor Brian Calley did, and I'm still waiting for Bill Schuette, our Attorney General, to do the same thing, but he has not, and I'm very disappointed in that.
The next big thing in our community after we get the presidential race out of the way is the Lansing mayor's race.
Oh, geez.
You've had a few differences with the current mayor. What are your thoughts?
So I think that Virg Bernero was a very strong, very capable, very successful mayor. And the last year or two, I feel that he's taken his role to a level of power and conceit that's really, I'm uncomfortable with. I really am uncomfortable with. And I don't know whether it's a phase he's going through and he'll come out of it and go back to being the mayor that I really loved and supported, or if it really is time for a change.
Now, beyond whether there should be a change, he is a powerful figure. Will the chamber abandon him? Will the union support somebody else?
Well,
what will happen?
That remains to be seen. It depends on who the candidates are. You know, the mayor gets very angry when you're not totally in lockstep with him. You know, I've certainly experienced that. But, you know, if you've got the courage to stand up for what you believe in, then what he does and says is really immaterial.
All right, and that's going to have to be the last word.
Well, there you go.
Kelly Rossman McKinney, thanks so much for being on City Pulse.
I had a blast.
Good.
Thanks, bro.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a great rest of your weekend. We'll see you next week.